role models and that sort of thing?
My dad and my mom, they had 5 kids who are very happy, and they sacrificed their business to move to the United States without really anyone here to make sure that we had better education, and always like everybody, I admire my parents. Other than my parents, Elon Musk. Yes.
How do you find great mentors?
How do I find great mentors? So for the longest time, I didn't have great mentors, which was really frustrating. And one is through books, legitimately, right? Tim Ferriss, Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, all these people, they wrote their shit down, Thoreau, Emerson, etc. Sorry for cursing. So books. 2, literally today I did this. Okay, so I can teach this relatively easily. If there is ever a person in your somewhat vicinity that you think is really cool, go after them like a shark smelling blood. So this guy I messaged today is named, who is the chairman of Cisco. He is speaking at a conference that I'm going to next week. And I was reading the itinerary, planning where I'm going to go, and his name popped up. And I knew from someone who mentioned in the past that he's dyslexic. And he's going to be in the same place as me. And so I sent him an email, and it was 3 emails in rapid succession, and each one of them invoked some pathos and talked directly to his life in a way where I'm pretty sure he'll answer. But I'm not sure he'll answer. And if he doesn't, I'm going to keep emailing him until he answers. Really important rule, if someone does not tell you specifically, do not email me again, keep emailing them. There have been people where I met at conferences, I talked to, they were yeah, let's meet up, whatever. I sent him an email, didn't respond. Sent him another email, didn't respond. 8 emails in, still no response. Found their phone number, left them a voice message, sent them a text, sent them a Facebook message, still no response. 10th email, their secretary response being hey, thanks for being persistent. John would love to meet you. How about coffee at this time? People don't when people don't answer, it's not because they don't want to talk to you. It's because they're super busy and their inbox is full. So shout over the noise until you're heard. Quick side story, Jack Dorsey is the guy who founded Twitter and Square. He spoke at RISD when I was a freshman. I heard Jack Dorsey was speaking there. I didn't know who he was, except that someone said he founded Twitter. So I went over. At the end of his talk, I walked up to him and was hi, I'm Cliff. What's your name? I'm Jack. Great, nice to meet you. I didn't ask him what's your name, because obviously I would have known what his name is. But I was hi, I'm Cliff. Can I shadow you for a day in your office in San Francisco? And he was maybe? And I was great. Can I please get your secretary's email and phone number? And so he gave me his secretary's email, messaged her 8 times, no response. Met him again at another conference, but he went through a side entrance so I couldn't see him. So I found someone in the audience who worked for his company, asked to meet his secretary. They said she left the company, so she gave me the number of his new secretary, messaged her 3 times. She did respond, but didn't set up anything. And then I won this big competition, so I sent her a video of it, and then she responds with, great, you have lunch one-on-one with Jack at this date, at this time. Great. So, how do you find mentors? Find people who are really awesome, who you can figure out who they are. If the Dalai Lama comes here, he's awesome, try to get with him. And then be hyper persistent until you can meet up with them. And then when you meet them, the best way to impress them is to tell them the story of your life in a way that conveys why you're cool. Yes?
How do you know which ideas are worth pursuing?
That is a difficult question. So, I have a disease, or had a disease, where I could not commit to an idea. That's why I built 38 products. It would have been much better if I built 20 products during my freshman and sophomore year, and then focused on one thing my junior year, and then it was a $1 billion company because I focused on it. That was my goal. It didn't happen. How do you know what ideas to focus on? So there's this concept in startups called minimum viable products. It's the first thing that you can do that conveys to a user what it is that you want to create. Me sketching that sketch of board break, that's a minimum viable product. Kind of. When we build a working version, that's great. So build a minimum viable product and put it in front of people. And then validate. So with Speechify, I posted a thing online that allowed people to purchase the thing before it was created. So I didn't need to waste the time building the thing. I knew from the beginning that people would want it. So find ways of validating your ideas before you build them. Now, once you build the thing, hopefully it takes off. If it doesn't take off for a long time, you should probably move along. But don't waste your time building something. Spend your time validating things. Is the most important piece of advice that I can give. Now, just my personal experience. This is me. I don't know how much it applies to other people. I need to work on something that really resonates with me. Otherwise, I jump to other things. And so when I picked Speechify, I had criteria for what I was looking for. I was looking for a clever app or business model. A simple app or website with a clever business model that did not rely on ads, because I don't like ads, that created real value in the world, so not a photo sharing app, that had something to do with me in a way where I would want to work on it for the next 10 years. So obviously, Dyslexia is close to my heart. I want to solve it for the 10-year-old kids who are exactly in my position. And audiobooks are close to my heart, and I want to give other people the ability to listen and learn in the same way that I did. So I found something that struck a chord with me. But when do you give up on ideas? When they're not working and you can't validate them, when you try to validate them. Yes?
More on the idea thing, if you ever think of an idea that you fall in love with and it turns out it's already been done before, how do you go about that?
Okay, great question. So, one thing I would highly, highly encourage is cultivate a sense of confidence within you that is so strong that no one can break it. And it needs to be like ridiculously, not realistic. So when I went to talk to Jack Dorsey, the only reason why I could ask Jack Dorsey straight up to give me shadow him was in my head. I'm being perfectly candid here. I know that I'm going to be as successful as Jack Dorsey. I'm not going to tell that to people normally. I'm telling this to you just because for the value of your education. I would never tell this to someone in a normal conversation. But I expect to be there. And so because I expect to be there, Jack Dorsey gets as much value from this meeting as I do. In the same way, when I see that someone else is working on something, I know that I can build it better, I can recruit better people, I can have better ideas, and even if it's and it can be better because it's different. It'll be in my way. And so they might be successful as well, but I'll also be successful. So I operate from the default of whatever I work on will succeed because I'm working on it. This is stupid and naive, but it's also super useful because it makes you take on challenges you normally wouldn't. I spent a legit month trying to build a jetpack. Physics-wise, you should not be able to build a jetpack. And what I would do is I would do the math equations and I would show it to physics friends. They'd be like, no, you can't do this, stop. And I'd be like, no, I'll find a way. So be unreasonable in that way. That being said, you're probably better off going after an idea that has a better market. Yeah.
How do you cultivate that belief system, that confidence? How do you grow that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I recognized from an early age that thing was valuable, and so I actively cultivated it. So one thing that I would do is when I would look at myself in the mirror, and Geffen, my sister, would be like, Cliff, stop looking at yourself in the mirror, you're so vain. She does not sound like that. Geffen is the sweetest person ever. I would ask her, Geffen, please don't tell me to not be confident, because I want to be confident. And I know that being unreasonably confident will be useful. Don't be vain, and don't be arrogant. There's a difference between confidence and arrogance. Yeah. Actually, there's two definitions to arrogance. One of them I like, one of them I don't like. First definition of arrogance is you think you are better than other people. I don't think I'm better than other people. Second definition of arrogance is thinking that you are better than you actually are. That's really useful. If you think that you're better than you actually are, you go after things that normally you would never go after. And then in the meantime, you actually learn to do the things that you set out to learn. So you might fail at the thing, but now you're the type of person who could build board break by themselves. So that you should cultivate in yourself. The second direct piece of advice for how to build that confidence, there's a book, really useful book, two books about this that I highly recommend. The first one is How to Make Friends and Influence People. It doesn't talk so much about influence people. It's how to make friends and how to put yourself in other people's shoes. There's a really great passage there talking about the impact of smiling. Practice smiling at strangers. Walk down the street and the stranger, lock eyes and flash a smile in your direction. Smile back. They couldn't resist smiling back. I actually smiled at the guy behind Valentina, but just because I smiled in her direction, Valentina smiled too. And so it's okay. I smile at you too. And so that will force you to interact with people a lot. It will build confidence. There's a bunch of other tips in that book similar to this. The other book is called The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Really good about startups. And he has a series of what's called comfort challenges. There are things that you can do in your daily life to encourage you to do this. So I did all of these before I came to college. One of them is literally going to a Starbucks and lie down on the ground and just chill on the ground and see how long you can do it. And it's awkward. I'm giving a presentation right now and I'm feeling the awkwardness, but it's okay. I'm basking in it. It's nice. So do stuff like that. And do a bunch of these. Go to a mall and ask every person from the opposite sex out for their number. Even if you have a girlfriend, just throw away the numbers at the end. But it'll literally make you train the muscle of putting yourself outside your comfort zone. Yep. Any other questions? Yeah.
What did you do with your old projects when you moved out to New York?
Good question. So board break I stopped working on, and then every 6 months I would go back to just because it was a project that I really liked. And I still do think that it has promise. Now that I'm working on Speechify, and Speechify is what I know I want to work on, and it's important to focus, I don't touch anything else that I work on. Because this is the most important thing that I could possibly be working on, and focus is everything. You are so much less capable, right? If you're doing this, it's not going to work. But if you do this, Like that's how you actually like make progress. So it's super difficult to be decisive about this. I'm bad at this. I'm bad at like leading projects, but figure out what works for you and then go after that thing. And my recommendation for like coming up with ideas is one thing. It's easy to come up with ideas. The trick for doing it is always ask yourself, this sucks, how can I fix it, right? I was once walking outside, it was cold, I was like, this sucks, how can I fix it? Maybe I can redesign gloves in a certain way or make a new jacket or like build an airtight bubble that I can live inside that has like heating. And I was like, nah, none of these ideas are good. And I was like, okay, I'm not gonna solve this problem. Like continued walking and like an hour later I was like, fuck, it's cold, this sucks, how can I fix it? And then I thought about it again. And then like a couple of other hours later, this sucks, how can I fix it? Like automatically, when something sucks, you immediately ask, how can I fix it? You will come up with 200 ideas per day. Coming up with ideas is easy. What's difficult is picking the right ideas from those. And the best way to do that is to build those principles to understand who you are and what is important to you, and then stick to those things, and then do those things. If you want to go one level further, also figure out what type of business you want to run. So I knew that I wanted to run a technology company because, like to build software, because building hardware and building biotech stuff was way too like capital and energy and time intensive, so not my thing. Will be later, but right now I just am I want to move fast and I don't want to wait. So I decided this type of business that has this type of model. So figure out what exact type of thing and then do it. So Jeff Bezos, who founded Amazon, that's what he did. He looked at all the industries and tried to figure out what was the best one. He was like, it needs to be an internet company and it needs to do X, Y, Z. And then he like kind of got more and more towards the idea of Amazon. And then he was like, you know what we're going to ship? We're going to ship books. And why are we going to ship books? And he had like a couple of other things that were in the short list with books. But the reason it was books was because books don't expire. Books are really easy to ship. And they have a big comparative advantage compared to normal bookstores because a normal bookstore only has a limited amount of books, while they have an infinite amount of books. So it was a great product to start building a online store with. So use those principles. So from your personal experiences of what will be happy and fun for you to work on, and then after that, add the business ideas. Other questions? Yes.
I mean, Bezos kind of looked around at industries and picked the internet, but all the rest of them, like Facebook, Apple, Google, just came out of basically like grad school students working on cool projects and they just took off, or they made them take off. So how do you see that difference?
Yes. Well, we're asking if you want to build something and you don't know what, how do you come up with these ideas? They didn't intend to make companies, right? Like Larry Page and Sergey Brin, like they weren't trying to make a company. They were trying to finish their PhD, but they built something super cool that turned into a company. Mark Zuckerberg, before he founded Facebook, built like a legit 20 other projects. One of them, he got $1 million offer for to sell to Microsoft and he didn't in high school. So very competent dude. And he was just building projects because he loved to do projects. His goal was not to drop out of Harvard. He wanted to finish school at Harvard, but he built a side project that was so successful, he just had to do it. So it's different. If you're like a CS person and you just build stuff for fun, because CS is so easy to build stuff with, like you will build useful things and it'll take off and it'll keep going. And Mark Zuckerberg is lucky because he's also very into psychology and he built projects that had to do with psychology and connecting people, so it was fun to continue on. But Amazon, if you're looking for a project, then that's a good deduction for what to work on. Yeah.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced with Speechify and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, good question. The biggest challenge was deciding to not take a job after school and do my own thing. And that is like, I count that as a challenge that happened with Speechify because I knew it was the challenge that made me able to make my own company now. I could have worked somewhere for like 2 years and during that time figured it out, but I much prefer the intensity of full-time I'm trying to figure out what I'm working on. So having the courage to not take a job after graduation was the most important thing that I did and the hardest thing that I did. After that was like building the product by myself from scratch at the beginning, which was really hard, and so I recruited other people to come work with me. But other people had other projects and like school and stuff like that, and so it's getting those people to make the time to work on the project with me. But we talked earlier about how you do that. Yes?
If you were to give like your 18-year-old self advice before starting Brown, what would you say?
Google Cliff Weitzman Medium, resources for student entrepreneurs. And the first line is, here are the resources I wish I knew about when I started Brown. So that and the books one and the productivity one, like the first piece of advice I would say is go read those 3 articles because those are literally all the advice that I would give. A synopsis of those things that are the biggest things that I would tell myself is 1, way to go with audiobooks. So everybody who's here, like take out your phones and download Audible. Like, listen to Audible. And after you download Audible, download Speechify. Actually, before Audible, download Speechify. On that point, if I was 18 right now, the first thing I would tell myself is go to getspeechify.com and use Speechify to read all of your readings. Now, legitimately, like, it actually will save you a ton of time. Because, like, literally that's what I did, right? The first thing that I did in college is figure out how to consume information properly. Aside from listening to books, learn how to code using Rob Percival's courses. And then what I would say is useful is develop your own principles. So do all that reading to develop your framework of thinking. If I was to like break down the learning that I had during my time in college, number one learning is like 3 a.m. conversations in random dorm rooms with people, or like at Joe's. Number 2 is working on my own projects. Number 3 is classes. You learn things from classes. Classes are great, but your degree, if you want to make your own thing or join an early stage startup, your degree doesn't matter at all. All that matters is your capability and your skills. There were many times when I'd have conversations with people in the Radi, and it would be like with a girl from like Saudi Arabia whose like uncle is the ambassador to France, and she's telling me things about the Saudi Arabian government that I could not Wikipedia in order to learn. But I had a macroeconomics test the next day, and it'd be like, microeconomics test, I'll learn about Saudi Arabia. Like, obviously this is the winner, and so I stuck and stayed. So make those judgments and don't like be obliged. Now, school is important. I'm not saying school is not important, but yeah, make time for those conversations with people and seek to have those conversations. Final one on this thread. The most useful thing that I did when I started college was for the first 3 weeks of school, I would have 3 dinners every night. I would go to the Radi, and I would grab a plate, and I would sit at a table with 7 people I didn't know, and I would be like, hi, I'm Cliff. And then we'd have a conversation. And then I'd grab another plate and sit at another table, and then I'd grab a cup of tea and sit at another table. So in that dinner alone, I met like 21 people. And then I'd do the same thing the next day, and the next day, and the next day. So in the first like month of school, I got to know 45% of my grade. And then I could pick really awesome friends, but also knew a lot of people, and knew what people were interested in, and I picked up people's phone numbers, etc. And the next year, I did the same thing again. So Valentin, who runs Startup at Brown, like I met Valentin the first week he was at school because I made a Facebook post saying, hey, I'm going to this event at MIT. Any freshmen who want to come to this event, you should come with me because I'll show you how to get there and it'll be fun. And so I took like 20 people to MIT who were all interested in similar things than me. I didn't do this through any organization or anything like that. I just wanted to help people. It just turns out that it allowed me to meet a bunch of cool people. So going to do this thing with food will help you meet a lot of people and will enrich your life more than anything else. So I graduated from Brown. I still look for every opportunity to come back here because the environment is so wonderful and this place is so great that like I left Speechify for a week to come here like a month ago when the school year started, and all I did for 3 days is sit in the Radi and meet freshmen. And then looked for an excuse to come here, and so Valentin was like, come speak at this thing. I'm like, sure, I'll come speak at this thing. It's an excuse to come meet people at Brown. So meet people at Brown. Meet people at Brown is my advice. Thank you. Cool. No one's kicking us out yet, so we can keep questions going if people have more questions. If you ask a good one, I'll do a backflip. Yes?
Do you have time for dinner?
Good question. No, but if you go search me on Facebook, Cliff Weitzman, and send me a message, I can continue the conversation with you.
Sure.
Cool. Okay. Yes.
So now, are you in San Francisco? Are you in Providence?
Yeah, so our office is in San Francisco, and I live in San Francisco, and I visit Brown every once in a while.
Okay. And how can we help you?
Oh, well done. How can you help me? Come on in, whoever it is.
Hi.
Hey.
We're going to be moving upstairs in just a little bit.
Okay, great. What time is it?
It is 3:34.
Shoot. Okay, I'm moderating that panel. How can you help me? Help me spread the word about Speechify. So, legitimately, go to getspeechify.com, and if you take the courses, like the information for one of your courses, put it on a public folder on Speechify so other people in your course can listen to those readings and share with the people in your class. I expect they'll use it, and that will create a ton of value for me, and I'll be very grateful. Thank you, guys. One second. That was a good question. I guess the backflip.